this morning. If you're a loyal viewer of the show, they're no stranger to you. And we have in studio Dennis Mbanda, and he is a political analyst. Good morning, Dennis. How are you feeling this morning? Good to see you too. It's been a minute though, right?
Yes, yes.
We also have in studio Joseph Chege. How are you this morning?
I'm fine, thank you, Olive.
Yeah. We thank God.
Thank
we
you.
woke up healthy.
Yeah.
We managed to get here without incident, so we are indeed grateful. And also in studio we have Akivaga Jayuga. I think I've hosted you once before, just once. So happy you could come back into studio this morning. And he has a legal background, and he'll be helping us also make sense of the politics we discuss this morning. So we are expecting advice, Mundalo, anytime now. But these gentlemen here will help me as I go through the newspapers. We begin with the Daily Nation, and the headline story is this: hidden tax pain in Ruto's budget. And some of this we've already been discussing. I'm not sure how hidden it has been. Perhaps the only hidden one that we really haven't heard much about until the last few days was this one, the 16% tax on insurance compensation. But the VAT on petroleum fuel to double from 8 to 16, that has caused a furore plan to have tax agents in markets, street stalls to monitor compliance. Housing levy charged at 3% of employee salary, with a similar contribution by employer capped at 5,000 shillings. Much ado has been made about what PS Charles Hinga had to say on the subject. He said, for instance, if you'd like to withdraw your contribution, the employer's contribution will act as capital, will remain in the fund. And somebody created this video with him constantly wiping his brow, spilling water, saying he's a very animated person. So we'll get your thoughts on that. Then there is the 5% excise tax on fake beards. Guys, I do know fake beards are a thing, but there is 5% excise tax on fake beards, human hair, wigs, eyelashes, and eyebrows. Really? Okay. Eyebrows. We draw them on. I didn't know we attach them on. 35% pay as you earn tax for those earning above 500,000 shillings. Risk of 150 billion shilling capital flight in steel manufacturing sector, with proposed levy on export promotion and investment. There is quite literally the Mama Mboga, who the Ruto administration said they would be, whose cause the Ruto administration said they would be championing. There is a figure on the front page here, and it is 1,344 shillings. Mama Mboga and border businesses earning 1,344 daily, or 500,000 shillings annually, will now pay 3% turnover tax. And let's take a look at the text that accompanies this image. Besides the controversial 3% housing levy, small business owners, workers, motorists, employers, manufacturers, and transporters face steep tax increases in the coming month if President William Ruto's administration gets support from Parliament to squeeze an extra 200 billion shillings from Kenyans' pockets. And also on the front page, but before we get into all of that, let me just get the thoughts of my panelists this morning. Public participation closes today, putting fate of proposals in the hands of MPs. A lot has been said on this finance bill. I'm not sure there has been a finance bill that has been interrogated as much as this one has. People have had a lot to say. I'm curious whether you took the time to submit memoranda, gentlemen. But first, let me get your thoughts, and I'll start with you, Dennis. I know you're a numbers man.
Well, good morning once again. I think for the first time in the history of this country, we are seeing public participation becoming an actual thing. I think Article 130 of the Constitution talks about, public participation in government processes. And this is a very good thing, that Kenyans are interrogating matters that really concerns their lives. And I think almost 1,300 or about 130 submissions so far for the memorandum has been submitted, and in itself is a good thing. And we want to encourage Kenyans to not only just for this discussion, but issues that really concern their lives, they are supposed to really start having serious discussions on this. Now, Olive, if you look at look at the topic of the Daily Nation. Hidden tax pain in Ruto's budget. You know, there's a lot of discussions going around the 3% on the housing levy. And the question is, this housing levy, is it really a saving? Is it a tax? What is it? Because remember, a few days ago when the president, there was an interview, the president said this is not going to be a tax. But if you look at the principles of taxation, something that is going to be deducted from your pay slip forcefully or mandatory deduction, that is a tax. So let us call it what it is. So I want to challenge members of parliament across the divide that this matter, when it comes to parliament, they need to put the political leaning aside and let them represent the Kenyans that elected them. Because these are really dire times. And also, look at these are the taxes that are hidden. Olive, if you're going to take 16% from compensation insurance, what are you talking about? Insurance compensations are not beneficial. What I can put it in simple terms, that there is no profit in insurance compensation. This is something that is supposed to take you back to your former financial position. So if the government is going to tax 16% for compensation on insurance, I think this is crazy. So we are calling upon members of parliament to really interrogate this, and this should not see light of the day.
All right. I did tell you Advice Mundala was just around the corner. He was quite literally around the corner because he's now in the studio. And Advice, on Tuesday, I believe I saw an image of you standing behind Kanini Kega. Was that you? I said when you come to studio this Friday, I will confirm. It was on the Star, front page of the Star on Tuesday. It was split into two. At the very top, there was an image of President Uhuru Kenyatta at the National Delegates Convention together, flanked by Raila Odinga. And it was Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka. And then I saw you there. Is it you? Was it you?
I think, Olive, you know me quite well. So if you saw me, that was me.
All right, we'll get into that because I'm seeing the smell that Dennis has on his face. Kwanza tupambane na mambo ya taxes. And Akivaga, what are your thoughts? Do you think Kenyans, for example, you said how many memoranda had been submitted? 1,000?
About 1,300.
1,300. Yes. Will it make a difference in your view? Will MPs actually take heed, or is this a done deal?
I think, first of all, thank you, Olive, for having me today in the morning. How the processes of making a law in a country like ours, it is upon the government to make a proposal in the form of a thesis. Then it is upon the opposition or disgruntled Kenyans, people who feel they're not satisfied or they want changes made to that thesis, to come up with their own antithesis. Then it is through this constant haggling, hoeing and hemming, an exchange of ideas, that in the end of the day, we shall be able to come up with a synthesis that shall be palatable to the generalities of the masses that are the people of Kenya, which I believe, through their representative in parliament, we shall be able to have a reflection of the ideas once the final bill passes.
All right, so you're confident that actually the Kenyans' views on the subject will be taken into account? Definitely,
Kenyans' views will be taken into account because this bill is meant for Kenyans and the public participation is there to ensure that their views, inputs is included into the final. These are only proposals. They are not the final decision. They are not the final laws that have been passed. They're only proposals. So we want the feedback, rather the Kenyans should give their feedback, and we have given ours. And now it is time for the next stage. Let us see how they're going to be deliberated at the House. Then we shall have a final outcome of whether the bill will pass or not, depending on what the MPs think.
All right. Joseph, I'm listening to Akivaga. He seems to have a lot of confidence, in the independence of our institutions, in this case, Parliament. But we've already seen senators come out and say even before this public participation exercise concluded that we will not change even a comma. So should we be telling it to the birds?
I think we're telling to the birds. And quite contrary to my friends here, I'm a very religious person.
And when I was going through my Bible this week, I came across a verse in First King, where when Solomon died, his son Rehoboam took over the kingship. And people gathered and told Rehoboam that your father's yoke was heavy. Can you make it light for us? It was about taxes. So King Rehoboam consulted the way this government is consulting with KEPSA, Kenya Manufacturing Association, the business people. Rehoboam consulted widely with all these people, and they told him the same thing, that your father made the yoke very heavy. Kindly make it easy for us. So Rehoboam told them to go and come back after 3 days. The same way these people have told you, I'm telling you, let's see what happens in parliament. So when they came after 3 days, Rehoboam had also consulted the elders of the country. Rehoboam told them that my little finger is thicker than my father's thigh. And my father used to discipline you with whips. I will discipline you with a scorpion. That is the case we're having in this country. So the people are crying, but the person they are crying to is telling them, forget about the taxes you are having. I will make the yoke heavier, and there's nothing you can do. I'm the king. It's a very pathetic situation in our country. Because you said in Senate, they said they will pass. This week they had a Kenya parliamentary group meeting where they said they are going to pass. They don't, and they will not consult. I only saw one MP from Mount Kenya consulting, and the people on the ground told him, dare pass that finance bill, and you will not see 2027. Thank you.
All right. Advice, the president has made it very clear that we are in dire financial straits, that we cannot continue to depend on external financing, that we must finance our own budget. That said, Kenyans have taken issue with the attempt to raise revenue, how the government is going about it. They're saying, why don't you contain, expenditure on your side, or, enforce austerity measure. Let's see some leaner running of government. Do you think that those in authority have paid attention, have listened to Kenyans on the subject? Given we've seen President, serving President William Ruto take stern action on matters corruption. Do you think, informed in part by this conversation about financing our budget?
Thank you very much, Olive. First of all, good morning to my colleagues and good morning to Kenyans. It's a pleasure to be here on this morning conversation. Now, to start off with where my brothers have just left on the matters of the finance bill and your question. First of all, I think we must be able to appreciate Kenyans because for the first time, Kenyans are very concerned about matters that concern them. The fact that we are actually having over 1,000 memoranda to Parliament, and this conversation has continued from the grassroots up, is already testament that we are getting better as a country in terms of just putting our interests first and being at the center stage of the conversation and at the center stage of issues that affect policy and at the center stage of governing our lives. Because over time, we have always seen Kenyans being a bit reluctant to really engage in such conversation. The fact that we are here today, I think, is already a plus. And now, on matters of squarely on the finance bill, yes, we saw the PS really struggle to make sense of the housing issue, whether is it a tax or is it what exactly is it. But my first positive about that is that government is willing to come out to explain to Kenyans what exactly they are doing, whether it's popular or unpopular. But then I have always had the question of who actually told government that Kenyans need houses? Who actually told government that there is the housing problem is a crisis for the country? I feel it is the right thing that the government is doing in terms of just trying to improve the standards of living of the people, but the formula of implementation of it is what is becoming unnecessarily suspect, because you don't understand why government wants to think for the people. We have a population that is a thinking population. We have people who are doing their own jobs. They have their own plans. People are servicing their own mortgages their way. People have dreams of building their homes either in Nakuru, Kitale, or wherever. How government wants to more or less force people to say you must be able to live in Pangani after you retire, you must be able to live in Ruaka after you retire, is already suspect. And if the wish is as good as it actually looks, then why wouldn't they make it a bit voluntary? Because why would you box everyone into participating in a housing fund, yet some of these people actually have their own houses? So it becomes, but then be that as it may, we are also being very linear in looking at the house, the finance bill in totality. We are only looking at that aspect of it only and quashing the bill in totality. We are becoming blind to some of the positives in the finance bill. And like for me, as a person who represents the young people, I would be very interested in particular with matters about the young people, even in this finance bill. And you can be able to see issues like the tax amnesty is very crucial. And I think that is a positive, especially for the young people who started their companies while in college and stuff. Now, those companies can be able to operate because these people started these companies. They were not even sure of what exactly happens when you run a company. Before it could become operational, they had enough debts to pay KRA. That tax amnesty is already good enough. The tax refund is also a positive in this finance bill. When the taxation for things like furniture goes up, that means it becomes difficult to import, and therefore that means production at the local level becomes much better. So the people who are now participating in these, who are mostly the young people participating in the furniture industry and such, it becomes easier for them because we have reduced competition from the outside. But unfortunately, the whole matter of the finance bill is only being discussed in terms of 3% housing levy. So I think there are pros and cons, but the beauty of all this is that our parliamentarians are being put to task. At the end of the day, we'll be able to gauge the quality of parliament that we have. Will they be able to speak for the people, or will they be able to speak for the government? And I think that is a test that is good enough.
All right. I'm sure, yes, Dennis, you have something to add?
Yes, I'd like to buttress his point. Recently, I think that was last week, if you watched what's going on in US, the House of Representatives, they met the President Biden to discuss about the debt ceiling. And after the discussion, they issued a presser, and then they said that we've not agreed. And look at what is happening in Kenya. The 2010 Constitution separates the executive, the three arms of government. These are three equals. And therefore, the Parliament of Kenya does not answer to the executive. And therefore, it is important that members of Parliament really interrogate this matter. For example, look at here. We are being told that Mama Mboga and Boda business earning about 1,344 shillings per day, which will be equivalent to about 500,000 annually. Now, on the tax proposals, we are being told that any person earning over 500,000 annually, they will be taxed about 35%. So therefore, we are not going to protect these people that really need to be protected. Life is really difficult outside here, and therefore we need members of parliament to really come out strongly and ensure that this thing does not see light of day.
All right, Joseph?
A small one, you see that 16% tax on insurance compensation?
Yes.
The only reason, one of the selling points of insurance in Kenya is the tax relief. The moment you put 16% tax on insurance compensation, you have entirely killed the insurance industry. Number 5, the 5% excise tax on fake bids. It should be extended to fake leaders. The people in this regime should also get a 5% cut for being fake leaders, not just fake bids.
I'm trying to find that video that had been, that went, okay, at least where my phone is concerned, that was shared widely. But even as I pull it up, let's take a look at what else is on. Sorry, you had something to add, Akivaga?
Yes, maybe just a small thing to add on this finance bill. The sentiments from my brothers here is that we need to get rid of it and really throw it away totally. But I don't think it is prudent to throw the baby in the bathwater. Because when you look at the bill, of course, there are issues which are, just speaks to the issues of Mama Mboga and the real hustlers in the country. For instance, the bill undertakes to lower, or rather to remove the VAT tax on LPG. I feel that is a good thing. And the issue which people are not addressing, and which I feel also needs to be addressed, and it has been lost in the conversation on these popular issues about VAT on fuel and insurance and the 3% housing levy, is that there is something there about members of parliament which personally does not sit well with me. For instance, I have seen a proposal in the finance bill that they want to remove the taxes, the VAT that MPs paid when on the mileage allowance. I mean, such things don't sit well with me. Also, when I look at their compensation that they're supposed to be given under the finance bill, it doesn't sit well with me. So these are the areas which I feel we need to shift the conversation to, because you're losing the bigger picture by focusing on these issues which can easily be amended, which can easily be changed by proposals. But there are also other issues in this bill which we are not paying attention to and which will pass if we are not very keen.
All right. Dennis, the last one on this.
Okay. I think the monster in the house is that the debt crisis in this country. So all these things that the austerity measures and what have you, these are just all talks. People will not eat talks. When Kibaki took over, if you look at, let's say, I want to give you a breakdown, let's say 100 shillings. When Kibaki took over, 18 shillings out of the 100 shillings was being used to pay our debts. But right now, in this current government, according to the projections, is that we are paying 80 shillings out of 100 shillings for the debts that we owe. And that money actually goes to oligarchs out there. And what we're remaining with is 20 shillings out of 100 shillings. So these 20 shillings, the county governments need 35 shillings out of this. That means we are at negative 15. Now, there is 50 shillings that the government needs at the end of the day for the recurrent expenditure. We've not, that is about now negative 65 shillings. We've not talked about the operational costs that you fuel for the police officers and what have you, and we've not talked about the money that the government needs for development projects. So what this is, what exactly is taking place here is that we are in a debt crisis of about 1.8 trillion shillings that we are owing in debt. So the issue here is about debt, and therefore the government is being forced to borrow to spend. And therefore what is happening here is that over and about, Kenyans, you know, the other day when you listen to Musalia Mudavadi, he said that there are tough times ahead in the next 3 years or possibly so. So my concern is Kenyans are, life is very difficult out there. Look at now the cost of bread. They've increased 5 shillings on top. Right now if you go to buy bread, it's about 70 shillings. If you want to go buy sugar, like now for example here, I want to take tea. I cannot pay 2 kg of sugar at 450 shillings. And look at now what is also happening in fuel. So at the end of the day, look, yesterday, I think the other day, I listened to what the Kenya Associations of Manufacturing were talking about. They're the biggest job creators in this country. And they're going to be affected directly based on these tax that are hidden in the budget. And I think Kenyans really need to come out strongly, even if it means that Kenyans by themselves are going to plan for Mandamano, to have this government listen to them. Because ideally, the government is not listening to anybody. They're not listening to private sectors. They're not listening to professionals. They're not listening to anybody. It is just Alleluia, Hosanna in the house over the hill.
They actually told us we are not overtaxed, if anything. We are undertaxed. But I think the Kenyans usually survive a lot of things in Kenya is with humor. And I did find the meme. This is the PS housing. Charles Singer saying, if si mimi na kusho was a person. We come back on the other side of this break with the rest of the newspaper review and get into our topic of conversation.